Okay, so we are talking about the examples or situations where Amira LeAkum is permitted, and we talked about the difference between kablanut, which is a contractual agreement, and a schirat yom, which is a per day agreement, per diem, and we talked about the difference between them. Meaning this is all in terms of having non-Jewish employees or contractors working for you on Shabbat, and why it wouldn't be an issue, a chil Shabbat for you. Okay, so in case nobody remembers, there are at least 3 issues that come to asking a non-Jew who is not forbidden to do work on Shabbos, right? To ask him to do work for you on Shabbos that you can't do, right? This is all derabanan, because the Torah, as far as the Torah is concerned, the Torah didn't say you can't tell somebody to do something, as long as you're not doing it, right? But the Chachamim said you can't, and there are 3 issues. First issue is we have the idea of agency. That once you instruct or empower somebody to do something for you, just because they're not you, doesn't mean that it's not like you're doing it, right? So, shliach shel adam kamoto, right? Once you've empowered somebody to be your agent, it is seen halachically as he's not just doing it for you, but you are doing it yourself. So, it doesn't help to empower somebody else to do something you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. That's A. The second thing is that you may not benefit from an act done on Shabbos that you aren't allowed to do. So the problem now is on the receiving end, once a person's done something, right, you cannot benefit from that. And any sort of, and then there's the issue of daber davar and memtzol hefzecha, which means that a person, there are things that you cannot do on Shabbos, like melacha, and then the things that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, you may not plan for them, even if you don't do them, and you may not talk about doing them. So even if asking a non-Jew to do something for you is not a problem, you're instructing them, is using your speech to talk about with intent to do things that you're not allowed to do is also problematic. So we have those 3 different issues always come up when you ask somebody to do something for you that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, right? So there are certain, let's say you're an institution and you hired a janitor to work for you to take care of the institution, and let's say you have a shul or a school or a beit midrash, and that janitor has to make sure that it's clean on Shabbos. So he's effectively working for you on Shabbos, right? So how do you have an arrangement that would be okay? Or let's say a caterer, to set up your events on Shabbos. Let's say you have a bar mitzvah, right? So how would you arrange that the non-Jew doesn't have to keep Shabbos can do things for you that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, right? So. Okay, so I'm going to read this piece again. Non-Jewish employees, contractors, etc. on Shabbos. As we have seen, even simply benefiting from the malacha of a non-Jew is forbidden under the principles of Amir LeAkum. It is therefore quite understandable that questions of Amir LeAkum exist with numerous employment and business arrangements in which a non-Jew is employed to do work of some kind for a Jewish employer. In some cases, the arrangement is absolutely forbidden, whereas in others, an employment arrangement may be perfectly permissible. This depends upon the halachic nature of the business agreement, as shall be explained below. There are also situations where halachic restrictions unrelated to Amir LeAkum may prohibit a non-Jew's malacha activity. Example of these shall also be cited further. Okay, so contractors and employees paid per hour. There are essentially 2 halachically relevant types of employee agreements. There's what we call contractual agreements, kablanut. So, okay, we'll talk about that. And then there is work that is done on a day-to-day basis per diem, which is called schirat yom, work of the day, or a worker for the day. Okay, kablanut, contractual agreements, are the most lenient of the employee arrangements with respect to Amir LeAkum. The kablanut agreement need not involve an actual contract, like a record or a document. Any arrangement whereby one agrees to work as a kablan is considered kablanut. So let's define that. A kablan is one who is contracted to supply a specific item or a defined service. Sure. Sorry? Yeah.
You have to speak louder.
I had a firm which had a branch in Serbia. All the people there were non-Jews. All the profit from where they were came to my firm. Are they allowed to work on Shabbos?
What's the arrangement? They're working for you?
Yeah, they belong to this branch.
Okay, meaning it's a branch of your firm. And they're earning for you profits on Shabbos?
Sure.
That's a problem.
No, that's what I'm asking you.
So it really depends. It depends on the type of arrangement. So that's exactly what we're talking about now. Meaning, let's say I hire you to do a particular job for me. And I have a deadline. But there's nothing about the arrangement that I've dictated that forces you to do any of the work on Shabbos. So the fact that you will do it on Shabbos has nothing to do with me. And I can benefit from it too, because I didn't tell you to do it on Shabbos. You could have done it, you happen to have done it for you, for your own purposes. You decided to fulfill our agreement by doing it on Shabbos. That shouldn't be a problem. If any other kind of arrangement could be problematic. We're actually going to discuss that, okay?
That's why I was asking, because it's relevant.
Exactly.
I'm asking you a relevant question.
We support and encourage that. And we ask you to pray, continue.
Oh my God, you
Okay.
scored one there.
Okay. See, you can do it.
Yeah.
Here's a man who understands. You are indeed a confederate. Okay. A kablan is one who's contracted to supply a specific item or a defined service. He's paid on commission or by the piece for a completed product and not for the hours he spent working. Kablanut is different from the ordinary examples of Amira LeAkum because the kablan is not reacting to fulfill the request or direct needs of a Jewish neighbor or friend, but is merely working for himself. He's not working for you. He's working for himself to meet his own business goals. He is therefore not regarded as a shliach. Meaning this is not a regular employee. See, in your issue, he might be an employee. We have to discuss. But this is a guy that let's say you need a mechanic. And you drop off your car, right? So if you drop off your car right before Shabbos, and you need it right away, there's a good chance that you're asking him to work on Shabbos. But if you drop off the car on Thursday, and you say, I need this as soon as possible, and he says, I can get it to you by Sunday, and he ends up working on it on Shabbos, that's not because of you.
If you drop it off just before Shabbos, and you say, I want it back by mostly Shabbos.
Yeah, that's Amira LeAkum for sure. Absolutely, okay? So, I mean, if you gave him enough time, theoretically, that he could do it on his own time before, and he's only doing it on Shabbos because of his own reasons, that has nothing to do with you. Okay? So he's not your agent. He's his own agent.
But if people see your car in his garage, and they know that you've got a very fancy car, and everyone knows this is your car, and they see the cars in the garage, and they see the guys working on it on Shabbos.
Right.
So they're going to say,
So that is exactly precisely why we read only moments ago. There are also situations where halachic restrictions unrelated to Amir LeAkum may prohibit a non-Jew's malach activities. For example, what you're talking about is marat ayin, right? That's a halachic category where it is misleading to the eye. We're concerned that in certain situations, Jews that observe may get the wrong impression, which would cause them to also violate Shabbos, or mistakenly think that something is correct.
they see that he's working on your car.
Right, that's marat ayin. Right, so that has nothing to do with Amir LeAkum, but it could come up, theoretically, in an Amir LeAkum situation. This point has important halachic ramifications in terms of the fact that somebody who's contracted is not your agent, but rather works for himself, as shall be illustrated further. In this context, one can also distinguish between a kablan and what we call the schir yom, which is a guy who works per hour or per day. He's a day laborer. Because the kablan is not paid for his time, he's paid for his results, right? He's not there to service, to be at the beck and call of his employer during the period of time that he's employed. He's paid for a product, whether the product be an item or a service, okay? So a cabinet maker who is paid for a finished piece of furniture, a dry cleaner who's paid for a cleaned garment, an auto mechanic who's paid for a specific repair, and a typist, even, who is paid per finished page. It is up to them. They have the authority to decide how to spend their time to fulfill their contractual obligation. So you are not dictating those terms. Although it is typical for a kablan to base his initial charge on his calculated labor time, he's not really working per hour. He's just making an assessment based on how he works, how much to charge you. The kablan's legal responsibility is only to supply a product. Just because he told me he's going to be working this and this many hours, I cannot demand that he work those hours, right? Not to submit himself to the service of his employer for any length of time. As such, he has the right to be paid in full, regardless of how little time he may have actually spent. I'm not paying for his time, I'm paying for a cabinet. A cabinet maker who was contracted to produce a custom-designed chair for 500 smackers that was supposed to take 4 workdays to finish has the right to demand full payment if it's just as good, even if it took him only 2 workdays to complete. He made extra money, good for him, right? Conversely, the customer is only responsible to pay the previously agreed sum for the project regardless of how many extra uncalculated hours the kablan might ultimately have to spend producing the item. Meaning, just because that's not an element at all in the agreement. A dry cleaning store may not charge a customer an extra fee if it had to spend more time and expense than usual to clean a particular garment that it accepted at its regular fee. That's something that the dry cleaner has to swallow. A kablan is regarded as one who's working for himself, of his own accord. This is because the direct focus of his interest in his work is to satisfy his own production needs. He's not concerned with serving an employer's hourly needs or demands, as a day laborer does. It follows that a non-Jewish kablan who produces an item for a Jewish customer on Shabbos is not acting as a shliach, or an agent, but rather is acting solely on his own behalf. As stated earlier, one may benefit from the malacha of a non-Jew who performed the malacha for himself. So one of I think the simplest way to think about this is a contractual worker is someone who you don't care about the labor, you care about the baby. Meaning, however he ends up spending the time doing what you care about is the end result. When you have a day laborer, you cannot demand end results. You're actually paying him for his time and his efforts. Right? You're paying him for his time. And you're hoping to get results that way, but really what you're getting is his service per block of time per day. Okay? Okay, his work, regardless of as long as he's working, regardless of the end product. So the first one is we're concerned about the end product. The second one, we're concerned about the actual labor. Okay, just a couple more examples. One may send his car for repairs to a garage shortly before Shabbos. Not like we said. One may send his car for repairs to a garage shortly before Shabbos, even though he knows the mechanic will do the work on Shabbos. However, he may not tell the mechanic to do the work on Shabbos. He can't tell the mechanic that he must have the car immediately after Shabbos, whereby the work will have to be scheduled on Shabbos, because this is tantamount to telling the non-Jew to work on Shabbos. He may not leave the car at a garage in a Jewish neighborhood where his car is recognized and people see his work being done on Shabbos. One may submit an agreement for 100 pages of... Okay, so one second. I just want to say that in that example, the reason why that's okay is this is all because there's nothing that you did that demands that he does the work on Shabbos.
Yeah, you're not telling me you want it was the Shabbat. You're
Right.
just giving it to him.
The fact that you just gave it to him before Shabbos, you could say, wait till Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
It's up to him when he does it.
There's nothing about the terms that you've set with him that demands that he has to do it on Shabbos for you.
Right.
See, Mac did. No work is done on Saturday.
Maybe. I'm not familiar with that. What?
Even if it's a non-Jew, the seating
Yeah.
looks a seating, right?
Maybe.
Looks a
If that's all it is, then yeah.
seating. Seating on Mac did that.
I did not know that.
There you go, you see.
Okay, so one may submit an agreement for 100 pages of typing to a non-Jewish typist who's being paid per page, even if he knows that she'll do the work on Shabbos. However, he may not tell her to do the work on Shabbos, tell her to have it ready right after Shabbos, knowing that this does not allow a reasonable time to finish without having to type on Shabbos, right? Even though she could theoretically exert herself to do the typing during weekend hours when people usually do not work. You may not have her do the work in his home or office where it's obvious that the work is being done for him. That's the marat ayin issue that you raised. One should not hire an out-of-town non-Jew to do work immediately after Shabbos, knowing that he will almost certainly have to drive during Shabbos to arrive on time. You can't tell an out-of-state, specialist.
Maris iron is when you do something, it looks like something else.
Right, so
So
you...
you're not allowed to hang your clothes up, wet clothes, just before Shabbos, even though you're in the house, inside the house. Because people might think that you wash the clothes on Shabbos. Here, it's very clear that he's working on Shabbos.
I've never heard that before. Is that so?
Yeah, you're not allowed
Because
to-
we talk about wet laundry a lot of times in halacha coming into Shabbos, and it was not. In fact, there's so many scenarios that come up. It would be impossible given that halacha of yours. So I'm sure there are chumrot like that, but I'm not familiar with that.
You're not even...
You're not supposed to do after chatzot. Ideally, you're not supposed to do laundry, but that's a separate issue.
Even in your private room where no one can see it.
According to this book, there's no such. There are many situations where we'll talk about that situation, and he doesn't say that that's asur. So I'm very interested. I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying it's a fast. If that's true, I'll have to check it out because it's omitted from the book. I'm gonna have to look into that.
It's not maritime.
What's not Marasayim?
Knows that he's working there on Shabbos.
No. What he's saying is, he's saying over here by the typist, or in any case, you cannot have specifically it done on your premises. Here, I'll read it to you again. You may not have the typist do the work in your home or office where it's obvious that the work is being done for you.
What about people who come in and clean the tables?
Oh, so we're going to get to domestic help soon. That's a different, meaning the arrangement, that's another category. We'll get to that. Okay? So what we've mentioned here is that you have to be concerned for Maratayim, and you have to, meaning it's okay as long as there's nothing about what you're doing that's insisting that the situation, whether it's verbal or it's understood or just the circumstances themselves, that you're not putting him in a position that he's doing the work for you on Shabbos. Okay, so that was all a kablan. Let's talk briefly about a per diem agreement. I'm just going to introduce it, and then we're going to have to call it a day. Okay, a schir yom, literally a day laborer, is one who is employed as an hourly worker to fulfill specified or unspecified duties for his employer during his employment hours. Any such employees are considered on call during their workday to serve any spontaneous request of the employer and are acting completely on behalf of their employer. As such, a non-Jewish schir yom, a day laborer, is considered an agent of his employer. That was the first major issue with instruction to a non-Jew, right? And he's not permitted to do any malacha at all on his behalf, even without being requested to do so. This includes malacha activities that do not produce any positive benefit, meaning all the normal things that we said in certain situations that would allow for Amira LeAkum, they're still problematic with the schir yom, because the arrangement you have with the schir yom circumvents all of that. It's obvious that everything he's doing is specifically for you. Okay, so even if there's no positive, direct halachic positive benefit, like we said, okay, the reason is because a schir yom is viewed as one who is subject to a perpetual standing request to do malacha during the hours of his employment. That's the whole arrangement. As stated earlier, it is forbidden to request a non-Jew to perform any malacha, even if no benefit is derived from the malacha. And when we continue next time, we'll do some examples of a day laborer and a schir yom. Okay, Baruch Hashem li'olam, amen v'amen. I actually don't have my own book, and there's different versions that I borrow.